Good evening and welcome to the Silicon Valley Entrepreneur, a monthly program where we interview startup CEOs and the investors that fund them. I'm Chris Gill, President and CEO of S-Phase, the largest and fastest growing not-for-profit for entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. And this week I'm very pleased to welcome Rob Hayes of First Round Capital and Zach Coelius of Triggit. What we'll be discussing tonight is business models that work for web-based companies. And we started to think about doing this when we held an event last month, which was way oversubscribed. And so we found that it was an opportunity to bring two people who have considerable experience in this field into the studio to look at this in some more detail. So Rob, if I can start with you first, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a venture capitalist in this field?
So I took a somewhat unusual path to becoming a venture capitalist. I spent the first half of my career in an operating role, mostly on the product side. Back in the bubble when when people were doing all sorts of crazy stuff, I was at a company that had an IPO, and as part of the IPO, they started up a venture fund, a bunch of us went around and drew straws, and I drew the short one. So I was the guy that was going to start up and run our corporate venture fund, which I started in April of 2000,
right.
Which was the perfect time. It gives you an idea of when you see the corporate venture funds starting up. Yeah, it means we're at the kind of maybe top of where we're going to be for that funding cycle. I stuck with it and. Ended up at a couple of different places where I was able to do some interesting things, and eventually at First Round about 2 years ago, which is a seed capital fund. So we invest very early stage companies. We will take, as we say, PowerPoint risk, invest in kind of two entrepreneurs and a dog type of thing, and help companies at very early stages that need very small amounts of capital. Grow their companies to kind of that next stage.
Okay. And how did you get interested in what has been called the Web 2.0 stage, but as we've talked about is more now that web-based businesses more than anything else?
Coming from a product role, which is the part of the business that's always really been the most interesting to me, is what's happened in the web, in web-based companies in the last, call it 4 years, has been you've seen a lot of really useful, compelling products that people love, and that actually solve real problems for people. And so when I look at the portfolio that we have at First Round and the companies that I sit on the board of, I can point to every one of them and I can say, of the web-based companies, which they aren't all web-based, but of the web-based ones, I can point to them and say, I know exactly what problem they're solving, why people use them. And for me, that's what drives the value of a business is, solving a real pain point for somebody.
Okay, thanks for that. And Zach, you were one of the winners at Launch Silicon Valley. You won your particular session on next generation internet. Triggit was very well respected there. Can you tell us a little bit about what you were doing before you co-founded Triggit and what led you to come and do it?
So Triggit's the fourth company that we've started. Strangely, my sister and I somehow get along really well, and we actually have started those four companies together. And so the last company we did, we had a Pew Trust funded nonprofit doing voter education. So basically, we had started the first online voter registration and absentee ballot company nonprofit back in 2002, and ran that with about 19 universities, about 500,000 college kids. And then after that, I went to graduate school and didn't really know what I wanted to do, and moved out here in the fall of 2005, just when Web 2.0 was starting, and just sort of got into the whole sort of excitement and buzz, and was just really kind of screwing around with different ideas and kind of looking for a job and really trying to figure out what I was going to do out here. And next thing you know, people were really interested in helping supporting some of the ideas that we came up with, and we got funded and the company got off the ground, and spent quite a bit of time kind of figuring out the model and how we were going to make it work, but it's been going great ever since.
So a little bit more detail that. Did you spot an opportunity, say this is a market we need to go after, or was it just an idea that came up?
Yeah, I mean, kind of both. I'm very much the way I look at starting businesses is I really believe in following the money. So Like, sort of a lot of engineers look at things as like, okay, I want to create a product to solve a very specific pain point, make people happy, and then from there we'll figure out how we can make money. I come more from the business side of things, and all of our businesses have been very much about, okay, where's the money come from in the business? Okay, how can we, solve a problem for that money that enables us to really have a business that is sustainable? And so we really saw a huge opportunity in long-tail content creation. So back in '05, really you started to see the beginning of these great publishing platforms online where really anyone and their grandma could create a website or start publishing and really start aggregating and developing an audience. So really just mini media properties. But there's a huge inefficiency in online advertising because unless you have significant scale, sort of 5 or 10 million page views a month, you just aren't big enough to be able to sustainably extract high quality advertising revenue through selling advertising to really high quality advertisers.
Okay.
So as a result, we saw there was this inefficiency that we could attack, and so we thought it was a good opportunity to start a business to try to solve that problem.
Okay, and we'll definitely come back and look at some of the metrics that you've mentioned there, because I think that's an important factor, is some of the numbers. And to help set the scene a little bit, can we talk about the current venture capital climate? So there's been no venture-backed IPOs for several months now. Yet there still seems to be plenty of money around. Rob, can you comment about what's happening in the venture capital world? Is there indeed money around for companies to get funded? What is the impact of there being a seemingly closed IPO window there? What sort of...
Well, the companies that we're investing in, especially the super early stages like we invest, we're not planning to see an exit for call it 5 on the inside, but 5 to 7 years.
Right.
And so the current kind of economic environment in terms of the different exit possibilities in traditionally M&A and IPO are really kind of irrelevant. In reality to the investments that we're making, in any given point in time. Now, the macro conditions do have an impact, right? And they have an impact in a couple of ways. One, just the kind of emotional impact, right? People are scared, right? And they're worried about what's going to happen, and they get more conservative. And so and that applies to venture capitalists. You begin to look at these things and say, well, I felt really good last year, and that's probably a deal I would have done last year, but this year I don't feel so good, and so maybe I'm not going to do that deal. But you also see anything you have that's selling to the enterprise. Enterprise budgets are getting crimped down pretty hard right now. Additionally, anything that you have that's in kind of a discretionary budget, those discretionary budgets are gone, right? So we're seeing a lot of things that are selling to the enterprise, especially things that don't already have a footprint in the enterprise. Tough to get off the ground right now. And then finally, advertising. CPMs are coming down. Advertising rates are, the advertising business looks like it's flattening out. I wouldn't say, it's not like 2000. It's not. I tell people all the time that, 2000, that was us. That was technology led. That was, there was a big, kind of technology stock bubble. Our fault, my bad, right?
Right.
This one isn't us, right?
Yep.
This is housing, credit, whole different ball game. Affects us, but isn't being led by us.
Okay.
But it does have that, like the impact on the advertising space. But that creates opportunities too. When advertising rates are going down, click rates, the CPCs are going down. All of a sudden, customers are a little cheaper to acquire than they were. And so if you can monetize those customers just as effectively as you could, but you acquire them much cheaper than you would have, that's a real opportunity. And so you see e-commerce businesses all of a sudden go into favor. Whereas, they might have been considered kind of Web 1.0 before, that sort of thing.
Okay, so I want to dig some more into that. And Zach, you and I were talking about this just earlier. I'm aware of, take a step back on that. A lot of the internet and web-based companies that we see through S-Phase, they have an idea and they believe they can market it. One, it's going to be viral. That's just going to happen. And secondly, they're going to make money through Google Ads. And I'm aware of several lifestyle businesses that make very good money doing that. But is it really possible, from your experience, you're in this field, is it possible to really build a fundable business using just Google Ads as the revenue generation stream?
A fundable business or a
Yeah.
lifestyle business?
A fundable.
I don't think so. I mean, I think, like I was saying earlier, I think where Google Ads really fits into the ecosystem is it's relatively easy to plug and play into pretty much any website and immediately start extracting some revenue from a website.
Right.
But what's problematic about Google Ads is it doesn't pay particularly well. And so as a result, I mean, if you have millions and millions of page views, even with Google Ads, you're probably making less than $10,000 a month from your website just using Google Ads. So I mean,
Can you expand a bit more on some of the metrics there?
yeah. So
How many unique visitors do you need? How many page views do you need? What are CPM rates?
So basically, the traditional way that advertising is sort of measured is it's called CPM, so cost per thousand. So let's say hypothetically you have 1 million visits a month to your website. So that's 1,000 CPMs. So 1,000 times 1,000 is 1 million. With Google Ads, depending on which vertical you're in, so if you're in the automotive vertical, you make more than if you're in the celebrity gossip vertical. But you're going to make somewhere between 50 cents to a couple dollars per 1,000 visits to your site. And so what you'll see is, so let's say you have that 1 million page views a month coming to your website, which is very hard to attain. Most publishers never even get close to 1 million. You might make, $500 to maybe a couple $1,000s from your website using Google Ads, which is not a model that Rob's probably all that interested in.
So what do you say to companies that come in and say, this is going to be viral, it's going to be Google Ads? What's the response to this?
So what I tell them is there's exactly one company that's made that's become $1 billion company off of Google Ads, and that's Google.
That's Google,
right?
Yeah.
And what I tell people is that to become a viable kind of $1 billion business off of advertising, you need to be a top 20 site. And so you need to show me in this current top 20 which one of those you're going to be knocking out. And it's an eye opener to people. And you asked an interesting question, which was, can you build a fundable business on Google Ads? And I think that, can you build a venture-funded business on Google Ads? I think that's tough because venture capitalists are looking for $1 billion exits. That's just the way venture capital tends to work. Even when you don't get $1 billion, I mean, a lot of our companies exit for far less than $1 billion, but we want to see even that opportunity. We want to know that there's an opportunity to get that company to $1 billion. And we'll look at a company and we'll say, this is a $50 million exit. And by the way, for the entrepreneur sitting across the table from me, that's a life-changing event, right? That $50 million exit. For a venture capitalist, it's kind of like, well, that's okay, right? And so, but there are people that will fund those type of businesses for whom it's also a very good thing. So I will send those type of businesses to angels that I know sometimes who are happy to put, a little bit of money meaning, $50 to a couple $100,000 into one of these companies, where a $50 million exit for that angel is also fairly significant.
Right.
And so I think that you can build fundable businesses off of kind of the long tail ad solutions, but venture funded businesses are tough.
Okay, so what are you seeing as some of the venture funded web-based business models that are working? If Google Ads isn't going to make it, what are you seeing that is working?
So a number of things. We're seeing a lot of lead gen businesses, and the lead gen market took a little bit of a dip when kind of the mortgage market melted down, because the highest paying lead gen opportunities were mortgages. But there's still a lot of quality lead gen opportunity out there, and this is lead gen is where you can essentially sell a customer opportunity to a company for X amount of money, and you can sell potential customers to a bank,
right,
or to a credit card company. Sending people to a website to check their credit report. That company will pay essentially a bounty on that user. And so that's one of the things we're seeing. We are seeing more and more e-commerce businesses where it's a transaction-based revenue model where
right.
Each transaction, some tiny percent of that transaction comes to me as the business that's facilitating that transaction. We're seeing a lot of people that are, I call it selling, most people call it selling picks to miners. I call it selling Levi's to miners.
Okay.
Maybe that because I'm in San Francisco. But it is, so you're arming all the people that are going to battle in these spaces. And especially in the advertising space, there's a lot of different technologies that can make advertising a lot more effective for a lot of these companies. And so you sell them platforms, tools, that sort of thing. And then finally, we're beginning to see more and more enterprise opportunities. People selling services, mostly web-based software and services to companies, and companies that generally have larger budgets, or they have even better in this day and age, lots of individuals with credit cards and the ability to expense things, where you can get somebody on a $25 to $50 to $100 a month subscription for a product that they wouldn't pay for themselves personally, but it's a huge win to their productivity, as a worker, and they can pay that, will pay that, and those are big opportunities.
Okay, and stick with you again if I can for a minute. There was a lot of buzz around freemium models. So do something that's free and then gradually have a premium service that you can suck people into. Are you seeing, are those still useful models?
We're seeing those. I mean, those can be very valuable businesses. Okay. When you look at, there's a company that filed for an IPO called LogMeIn.
Yep.
Which is, I think they're going to do $1 billion IPO. This is a company that almost no one's ever heard of. But what they're doing is essentially providing a little free service that allows you to log into your PC from somewhere not your PC, and then have a lot of upselling. And but those guys are monsters at kind of the metrics and knowing exactly what their conversion is and how they get customers into the funnel and how many are coming out of the funnel with a paid subscription. Those are really, really hard businesses to run. But if you can do it well, you can make a lot of money. WebEx is another example of this. $3.2 billion business. Yep. But most people don't, when they come in talking freemium, they understand kind of conceptually what freemium means, but they don't know how to run that type of business. It's a metrics and data-driven business.
Okay.
And if you don't know how to run that, you're not going to make money at it.
So Zach, you're nodding your head away here. You sound like you got some personal experience with it.
I know. We talk to a lot of entrepreneurs who think about the freemium model, and what they don't realize is that freemium is really just another way to market. You use your product and giving your product out for free as a way to bring in sort of warm leads, and then you take those warm leads and you monetize those with sort of an upsell on the side. And I think a lot of people think that, like it's just a different model, but really, Rob's right. You have to think about it like it's a marketing problem, and really put metrics to work on it, and really understand your funnel, and really understand that whole process of how you get them from the beginning all the way to the end, where you extract that revenue from them. And I don't think a lot of entrepreneurs think about it that way, which is it's a really hard problem. It's not easy.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. So we had the good fortune at the start of the year to have Jeffrey Moore come and talk about Crossing the Chasm in a revised version. So he called it Crossing the Chasm 2.0. And he didn't really, he knew very well how selling business to business worked. He understood what you had to do there. But he still hadn't figured out, with all the research he'd done, all the stuff he'd been looking at, he still hadn't figured out what made sense for internet business models. But what he was able to flag up was that there are now two chasms for people to cross. One, you've got to get people to come to your website, and secondly, you've then got to find a way to monetize it.
Right.
And with so many websites out there, let's start with you, Zach. What are the problems of getting? You've got to get somebody to come away from another website. They're probably already on somewhere. What insights have you got into doing that sort of thing? Getting somebody to come to your site. How do you get people to do that?
Sure. I think the internet is changing quite a bit. It used to be, for a long period of time, people would give away links to other people's websites for free. So they would be, here's a cool website, and they would link to it, and you could go there, and that's what you saw on, Yahoo did that. So Yahoo's whole business model grew up around giving away free links, and sort of that process of handing users to people and letting users kind of flow around the internet was very much sort of I'll give you some users, you give me some users, and it'll be very friendly. And I think there's becoming an emergence, and Google has really pioneered this, of sort of the how do we make money by moving users around the internet and extracting value for that, which is great in that Google makes sense of money doing it, but it makes it incredibly difficult for a lot of startups early on to acquire users and to acquire traffic. And so what they do is they resort to using Twitter, they resort to using as much word of mouth as they can possibly get, or they blog, or they try to use marketing, PR, get in TechCrunch to get those small trickle of early users that they really need to then hopefully start that viral process, because no one really at the end of the day can afford to buy users from Google on a regular basis to sustain your whole business model, and it's incredibly difficult. But I think what we're learning in the web space with our company, and when really what we do is we provide users to these companies, and so we talk to them on a regular basis. We're learning that there's a great deal of knowledge base that's developing on the web that just didn't exist 3 or 4 or 5 years ago about how to really effectively think about how to acquire new users and how to manage that flow and do it in a way that's cheap and in a way that you don't have to go out and spend $100,000 of Rob's money that he gave you to jumpstart your business, because it's very difficult.
Okay, so you mentioned TechCrunch there, and we've all seen the TechCrunch bounce, so it goes like that. So how are you seeing companies that are successful in doing this, getting people to come to their websites?
I think there's two things, right? I mean, so let's talk a little bit about, Zach mentioned virality.
Okay.
And so people come in to me and talk to me all the time about, say, how are you going to get distribution on this? How are you going to get people to come to your site? They go, well, we're gonna build viral features. Okay, so and then when you dig into that, you'll find that they don't understand necessarily what virality means. They sometimes will think virality means word of mouth, which is, to me, it's two different things. Virality is very simple. It is if each person that you bring into the site brings more than one person into the site, and it could be like 1.01 more people into the site, then you've got a viral site. That means that your users are marketing for you. And I think but viral sites and the people that really understand virality or virulence or whatever the right word is, understand that you need to build a product from the ground up to be viral. Virality has to be built into the product. It's not something that you add on later. You don't add the virality module, right?
Okay.
And the way that you do that, I think there's two things. One, the site has to be useful for you just as a standalone, right? If I find something very, very useful, something that is important to me, and Facebook is a great example. I'm 18 years old. I'm at a new school. I'm surrounded by people that I've never met before. I don't live with my parents anymore, and there's lots of different opportunities for me to very easily do things that were very hard for me when I was, last year. And so the only thing that would make that better is if I got all my friends on that site, right? And I know that it would be useful for them. And so if it's good enough for me to use, that I feel comfortable essentially spamming my friends to come in and join, that's viral, right? So it has to be useful to me, and then it has to be better if there are more people involved in it.
And the thing is that there are very few websites that's true of.
Right.
I mean, Facebook is an example, but most of the web companies that people come up with ideas for are not naturally made better by getting my friends involved. And so they aren't viral. They're just, maybe if they're lucky, they're good enough that I tell my friends about it. But it's not the same thing.
And most people miss on the wrong end of this. They will build a site that's only useful when a bunch of people are on it.
Yep.
So when the first person goes to use it, it's useless. And so the best example of a company or a product that wasn't this way is Delicious.
Right.
Where Delicious was wildly useful to me if I was the only person on the site, right? And it became more interesting to me as more and more people came and used it. It wasn't necessarily viral, but it became more and more interesting over time because there were more and more, tags on the site that wouldn't have otherwise been there.
Or YouTube.
Right.
YouTube is great. Put up my videos, my friends can see them. Oh wow, YouTube turns into this great repository that we can all share videos.
Right.
Flickr, put up my pictures, everyone can see them. Wow, there's social features that are built in that take advantage of that content to make this wonderful thing that gets better and better with more people being added.
So this key thing, it's got to be better the more people you have coming in there with you.
And it's not only got to be better, but it's got to be better for me, the user. So it's got to be better that my friends are on that site and taking advantage of it and makes my experience with that site better.
So the two components of me wanting to spam my friends are, it will help me because it'll make my experience better, but they will love it, right? So I'm not bugging them, and I'm making my life better. Hence, I will spam my friends.
Okay.
Right.
So I've got two questions here that I'd like. So all right, YouTube, ultimate of all this, it's got everybody coming there. It cannot monetize what it's doing there.
Yeah.
So that's the second chasm.
Yep.
If they're the ultimate in doing that, I mean, how have you seen people monetizing this without spooking the herd?
So I mean, I think it kind of goes back just a step back to what I said earlier, and that I think a lot of entrepreneurs come out here and they say, look, this video problem is this great problem, and I'm going to build the best video site in the world, and everyone's going to come to my video site. And what they don't really think about ahead of time is that, well, where does the money come from, and why does building a video site make the money want to give you money? And the problem with YouTube is that the people who would traditionally advertise on YouTube, those people don't have the interest in advertising on user-generated content. I mean, we're talking about Coke and Chevy, and these are big advertisers, and they want to be on professionally edited and created content like this show. And that's what they're interested in buying, and they're probably never going to buy YouTube in any sort of meaningful way. And so a lot of these companies that people start, they don't take the time in the beginning to say, let's say this is hugely successful and I build this great repository of content and this great audience. Is that audience aggregated and created and built in such a way that I can then sell ads or sell whatever it is I'm selling premium to that audience or with that audience or on top of that audience in order to monetize it? Because a lot of these business models that are out there today are not, they don't really think about it ahead of time, and they end up having a huge audience that isn't really worth that much.
Right. And if a startup comes to you and says, I've got X number of unique visitors or monthly page views or something like that, what number is there that you start to get interested at?
Well, I think that there are two sides to that, right? So there are the equation is number of users times value per user, right? And so if you've got a long tail 50 cent per click, or 50 cent effective CPM, kind of site, and you're bringing in 1 million users a year, I'm like or a month. That's great because that's $500 a month, and that's not a big business. If you are able to through a lead gen mechanism, you get an average revenue of, call it $5 per user. Well, gosh, 1 million users a month, that's $5 million a month. That's a huge business.
Okay.
Right. So it really depends. The same number of users, are vastly different. And then you get into how do you acquire users? What's the cost of acquisition?
We are now running out of time. We may have to get you back again because there's still a lot of stuff we could go through. But unfortunately, for this session, we're now at a time to thank you, Zach. Thank you, Rob. And thank you to the audience. This is Chris Gill with S-Phase for the Silicon Valley Entrepreneur, signing off for this month. Thank you.